You start to feel it before you can even put it into words. It's like the air in the room is different, but you can't pinpoint exactly when it changed. At first you think it's just a phase or something minor, but the truth is, something deeper is happening. Her presence begins to shift in a way that doesn't match her usual energy. When you've been with someone long enough, you become attuned to the small nuances in their behavior, and that's when you begin to notice that her vibe isn't the same. She's still there physically, but emotionally she's checking out. It's like a slow fade that starts small. Maybe she used to greet you with a smile, but now she barely glances at you. The affection that once felt so natural is harder to come by. You ask her how her day went, and instead of opening up to you, she gives you one-word answers or a vague comment like, "I'm just tired," or "It's nothing." In the past, when she was tired, it would have been followed by a soft smile, or a cuddle to unwind together, but now, it feels like a wall. She's still going through the motions, still sitting next to you, but it's like you're not really there anymore. She's emotionally withdrawn, and it's something that you can feel in your gut. Even if she hasn't said a word about it, you try to rationalize it at first, telling yourself, it's just a stressful week for her. Or maybe it's just the routine kicking in. You want to believe that everything's fine, but there's this nagging sense that it's not. You feel like you're getting left behind, and it's not that she's physically going anywhere, it's her energy. That connection you once had is just fading, and you're starting to realize that she's pulling away emotionally. It's the small things at first. Maybe she doesn't reach out as much, or when you try to initiate something, like a kiss or a compliment, she seems distant, almost indifferent. You used to have these moments where she'd look at you with warmth in her eyes, but now, it feels like she barely registers you in the room. It's confusing. You've asked her if everything's okay, and she always tells you that everything's fine, but the vibe is off. Her energy used to be this magnetic force that made you feel connected, but now it's like there's this space between you that you can't cross, no matter how hard you try. You tell yourself that maybe it's just a phase, that she's just going through something and doesn't know how to talk about it, but the more you sit with it, the more you realize something's changing. And it's not just her being tired or off. The scariest part is that she's still there, but you feel emotionally invisible. You're with her physically, but it feels like you're in different worlds. You can see her, but she's not really looking at you. There's this emotional distance that wasn't there before, and it's something you can't ignore anymore. The problem isn't that she's pulling away, but that she's doing it without giving you a real explanation. She's become emotionally distant, and the hardest part is that she won't admit it. Instead, she just shuts down or deflects, making you question yourself. And that's when the real shift begins, when she's right there, but you both know she's already checked out. Moment the defensiveness kicks in, you know something's wrong. At first, it's just a little tension, but it quickly grows into something bigger. When you ask her simple, innocent questions that would have once been a natural part of everyday conversation, her response isn't the easygoing answer you expect. Instead, you get a defensive reaction, like a wall coming up out of nowhere. You might ask, "Where were you today?" Or "Who were you texting earlier?" And instead of a calm reply, suddenly, she's on the offensive. The small things become triggers. It's as though you've asked her about something much more serious than a simple question. She might snap back with, "Why are you always checking up on me?" Or "You don't trust me, do you?" And now, instead of having a simple conversation, you're in the middle of an argument that never needed to happen. It's as if your questions aren't just questions anymore. They've become accusations in her eyes, even though you never meant them to be. It's not about you being suspicious. It's about her not wanting to face the truth of what's happening. She's been hiding something, and the pressure's starting to build. When she reacts defensively, it's not because she's trying to protect her privacy. She's trying to protect herself from being caught. She might even start calling you controlling or accusing you of being paranoid, trying to twist the narrative so that you question your own feelings. The guilt is starting to show, and she's doing everything in her power to make sure you don't get too close to the truth. Then there's the phone. This one's almost too obvious to ignore, but many men still do. It used to be that she would leave her phone lying around, with the screen facing up, notifications pinging and buzzing like everything was normal. But now, that phone is always face down, hidden away, tucked in her bag, or taken with her into the bathroom. The secrecy is palpable. It's not about privacy anymore. It's about making sure you don't see what she's doing, who she's talking to, or what she's hiding. You may even start noticing that she turns off notifications or deletes her messages faster than she used to. When she becomes protective of her phone, it's no longer about keeping her personal life safe from you. It's about hiding the other life she's nurturing without you. And the deflection, that's another red flag. When you bring up these changes, the defensiveness ramps up. She might tell you that you're being toxic for even asking about her phone, turning the situation around to make you feel guilty for wanting transparency. It's as though the more you push, the further she pushes back. It's all a smokescreen, an emotional game to keep you from getting too close to the reality of the situation. And the more she tries to shut you down, the more you feel like something is terribly wrong. She's not being transparent because she's hiding something. The lies aren't just about the cheating, but about the emotional manipulation she's using to keep you from questioning what's really going on. This shift in her behavior is hard to ignore. You don't have to be a detective to see the change. It's all in the little things, the defensiveness, the secrecy, the subtle manipulation. She's trying to keep you distracted, to make you feel like the problem is you, not her actions. But deep down, you know it's not about being controlling. It's about protecting yourself from a betrayal she's too scared to admit. It's not just about the little lies. It's about the way she's turning your reality upside down. And the more you try to confront her, the more she tries to hide. And that's when you realize the truth is being buried, and you're the one left digging for it. When emotional betrayal starts to take root, it's often much harder to spot because it happens gradually, almost imperceptibly. At first, it's just little things that don't make sense. She starts to pull away emotionally in ways that don't seem overt. But if you're paying attention, you start to realize something's off. She might still tell you that everything's fine, but her actions speak louder than her words. She becomes more distant, not just in terms of physical affection, but in emotional availability. The little moments of intimacy that once seemed so natural are now replaced with silence or vague responses. But the most painful part is that it's not just that she's pulling away, it's that she's starting to turn that distance onto you. She doesn't share her thoughts or concerns with you anymore. When you used to be the one she would come to when she needed to unload, now she's got someone else for that. Maybe you notice she's texting more, or talking to friends in a way that feels different. She starts to tell you less and less about her day, about her emotions, about the little things she used to share without thinking. When she does open up, it's minimal. I'm fine, or it's nothing, but you know it's not just that. She's already confiding in someone else. And that's where her heart and mind have started to go. That emotional connection you once had is starting to slip away. And it's not that she's leaving you, she's already emotionally checked out. This shift can be harder to catch because it doesn't always look like a breakup. It's subtle, like a fading light that you can't see dimming until it's too late. She may start talking to you less about her feelings, but if you listen closely, you'll hear the small signs of her growing connection with someone else. She might say something like, "I don't really want to talk about it," when she used to open up to you freely. That's the point where you realize it's not just that she's emotionally unavailable for you, but that she's emotionally available for someone else. Another sign of this emotional betrayal is when she starts to justify her actions or make excuses for the way she's been acting. She might even project her own feelings of guilt onto you. If you ever ask her about her behavior, she could turn it around on you, asking if you've been distant or accusing you of being the one who's not there. It feels like an attempt to deflect from the truth, to make you question your own actions so that she doesn't have to face what she's doing. Instead of owning up to her emotional disconnection, she might throw in a statement like, "Why are you so distant?" Or maybe you don't care anymore either. These questions aren't coming from a place of insecurity, but from a place of guilt and an attempt to ease her own conscience. When you start to feel this shift, it's like being on the outside of the relationship, looking in. You're no longer the person she turns to, the one she shares her fears, her hopes, or even her daily moments with. It's all going to someone else. And no matter how much you try to re-engage, you can't seem to get through. It's this kind of emotional betrayal that sets the stage for what's to come. You don't see the other man yet, but he's already there, occupying the space in her heart and mind that used to be yours. And even though she hasn't physically crossed the line, the emotional disconnect is already a betrayal. The trust has been broken in the quietest, most insidious way, and it's the kind of wound that's hard to heal because it's hidden, buried beneath layers of small signs and half-truths. The hardest part? She doesn't even see it as betrayal. She'll justify it by calling it harmless connection or saying it's just a friendship. But the truth is, it's the death of the emotional intimacy you once had. And when you realize it, when you see that your emotional space has been filled by someone else, that's when the pain starts to hit. The shift from emotional to physical disconnect doesn't happen overnight, but when it does, it's glaring. You begin to notice the small changes that you had been brushing off earlier. You reach for her, maybe for a kiss or just a touch, and she pulls away. It's subtle at first, but it's there. She doesn't initiate affection anymore, and when you try, it feels more like she's going through the motions than actually connecting with you. You remember when the simplest gestures, like holding hands or hugging, felt natural, but now, they're just empty actions. She's no longer the person who wanted to be close to you. Now, it's like your touch is something she has to endure. It's not just about physical intimacy either. It's the way she talks to you, the way she responds to your attempts at closeness. The warmth she once showed you has turned into coldness. You used to joke around, laugh together, talk about your day, but now she gives short, clipped answers. The conversations that once brought you together now feel awkward, like you're both walking around a void, unsure of how to bridge the distance between you. You begin to feel like an outsider in your own relationship, trying to break through barriers that weren't there before. Then comes the phone. You used to be able to glance at her screen, even peek over her shoulder at the things she was doing. It wasn't about being nosy, it was about sharing, being part of each other's world. But now, the phone becomes a fortress. She hides it from you, turns the screen away, or even takes it into the bathroom with her. Notifications are muted, and you can tell she's more protective over her device than she ever was before. It's not just privacy, it's secrecy. And you know deep down that the emotional distance she's creating in her physical behavior is mirrored in the way she's guarding her digital life. She's hiding something, and though she's not saying it directly, her actions speak volumes. You try to engage, ask her what's going on, but the defensiveness only increases. She might snap at you for being controlling or toxic, for even suggesting that something might be off. Instead of hearing her out or even being open to the conversation, she turns the tables, deflecting, accusing you of things you haven't done. And that's when the emotional manipulation starts to take hold. She needs you to feel like the problem so she doesn't have to face her own guilt. The focus shifts from her behavior to your supposed issues, and just like that, the spotlight is off her, and the reality of the situation is buried in her accusations. You start to notice how she acts around other people, especially in social settings. With you, there's this invisible barrier now. When she's with friends or strangers, there's a different energy. She laughs, she engages, she's warm. But with you, there's a detachment that feels colder than anything you've ever experienced. It's like you're no longer her priority, no longer the one who she turns to for comfort. She's emotionally checked out, and her physical actions follow suit. And then the silence starts. The responses become delayed. The texts that used to come instantly now take hours. When you ask a question, you get a vague response, or, worse, no response at all. She's still present, physically, but emotionally, you're not a priority anymore. The moment she stops replying in the same way, when she no longer engages with your attempts to connect, you realize that the emotional betrayal has now moved into the realm of physical absence. She's right next to you, but it's like you're invisible. At this point, you know deep down that you're competing with something you can't see. You're trying to fix something that's already broken. You don't need her to admit it. You can feel it in every interaction, in every shift in her energy, and that's when the painful truth becomes undeniable. She's already pulled away, and you're left trying to rekindle a flame that she's quietly let burn out. By the time you reach the final stage, the signs are impossible to ignore. She's emotionally checked out, and now, the slow unraveling has reached its peak. The shift has been happening gradually, but now it's clear she's not just physically distant, she's emotionally detached. It's like you're living in the same house, sharing the same space, but you might as well be strangers. The connection that once felt effortless now feels like a distant memory, like something that's been erased over time. You begin to notice her indifference in the smallest of things. She doesn't check in with you anymore, doesn't ask how your day went or how you're feeling. The emotional safety you once found in her has evaporated. You start to feel invisible, like you're speaking to a wall. And the harder you try to get her attention, the more it feels like she's retreating, even further. When you open up, she doesn't listen, she doesn't care. Instead, your vulnerability becomes ammunition. She uses your feelings against you, making you feel like your emotions are an inconvenience, like you're weak for having them. The person you once confided in now treats you like an emotional burden. This is the point where the emotional abandonment becomes unbearable. You try to reach out, to break through the wall she's built. But instead of pulling you closer, she pushes you further away. It's not just that she's gone silent. It's that her silence is deafening. When you talk to her, it's like talking to a stranger. She doesn't react the way she used to. There's no more warmth, no more empathy. It's like she's emotionally disappeared, but her body is still there, occupying space. You feel the absence of her in every interaction, every moment where you used to be able to look at her and know exactly where she stood. And that's when it really hits you. She's not emotionally invested in this relationship anymore. The apathy is the most painful part because at least anger shows some level of involvement, but indifference. Indifference means she's already checked out, and now, it's just a matter of time before she completely disengages. Her behavior has shifted so much that you no longer recognize the woman who once adored you. Her attention is elsewhere, her heart has wandered off, and you're left standing there, trying to grasp at something that's already slipping away. Tried everything to make it work, to bring back the spark, but it feels like you're competing with a version of her that doesn't exist anymore. She no longer cares about your wins, your progress, your growth. In fact, when you achieve something, her response is cold, if not dismissive. The woman who used to celebrate with you now barely acknowledges your victories, and instead of cheering you on, she subtly undermines your success. The things that once made her proud of you now seem to irritate her. That's not just indifference. That's the decline of a relationship where she no longer sees you as someone she wants to be a part of her future. But even as she becomes emotionally absent, she keeps you around. Not because she wants you, but because you're still a safety net. You've become her fallback plan, the person who's always there in case the new path she's testing out doesn't work out. She's emotionally prepared to let go, but she hasn't fully committed to that decision yet, so she keeps you close enough to avoid confrontation. But the worst part, you're no longer a priority in her life. You're the second choice in a relationship that's already died, but she hasn't yet had the courage to admit it to you. The final shift happens when you begin to realize that you're not the one she's building a future with anymore. She's already emotionally moved on, and her actions are just a reflection of that truth. When you try to make plans, talk about the future, she gets vague, distant, or says things like "I don't know what I want anymore." These are not just signs of confusion. These are the words of someone who's already emotionally preparing to leave. And even though she hasn't walked out yet, she's already gone. At this point, you don't need her to admit it. You don't need closure. You don't need her to apologize. What you need is to recognize the truth. She's emotionally shut down, and nothing you do will bring her back. The hardest part is walking away when you feel like you're still invested, but the moment you leave is the moment you regain your power. It's not about revenge. It's not about guilt. It's about reclaiming your dignity and walking away from someone who no longer values you the way you deserve. You don't need to chase someone who's already left you behind. You need to leave the space they've created, because it's no longer yours to occupy.